The classroom fell silent. 23 third graders sat frozen, staring at the empty corner of the room where seconds earlier, they all swear, stood a teenage boy in jeans and a Nike sweatshirt. Their teacher, Mrs. Patricia Donovan, felt her hands trembling as she tried to process what just happened. She had seen him too. A boy who wasn't enrolled in the school, who hadn't come through the door, who appeared and disappeared in front of an entire class of 8-year-olds and their teacher in broad daylight. But what terrified her more than the impossible appearance was what the boy had said before vanishing. 7 words that made her blood run cold because she knew, with absolute certainty, that those words were about to come true. Get the children away from the windows. 15 seconds later, a driver having a medical emergency crashed through the fence surrounding the playground, his car careening across the space where the children would have been standing if Mrs. Donovan hadn't immediately evacuated them to the hallway after the boy's warning. The car struck the classroom wall exactly where the windows were, shattering glass across empty desks. Every child was safe, because a boy who shouldn't have been there warned them just in time. 3 days later, a parent brought a photograph to the school. It was from a religious education class about modern saints. She pointed to the image and asked Mrs. Donovan if this was the boy she'd mentioned in the incident report. The teacher stared at the photograph for a full minute before whispering, "That's him. Exactly him. Who is he?" The parent's answer changed everything. "That's blessed Carlo Acutis. He died in 2006. He's been dead for almost 20 years. What happened in that Catholic elementary school in Ohio in March 2024 is just one of multiple documented cases emerging worldwide of Carlo Acutis appearing specifically to children, often in groups, always with warnings or messages, and always leaving behind proof that cannot be explained away. These aren't fever dreams or individual hallucinations. These are collective experiences witnessed by multiple people simultaneously, often including adults, and always followed by events that prove the authenticity of what was seen. And here's what will shake you. Carlo seems to be appearing to children with increasing frequency, delivering specific messages about what's coming, warning about dangers, and preparing a generation for trials that adults aren't ready to acknowledge. Heaven is speaking through a teenage saint to children who will listen, and the pattern of these appearances suggests something urgent is unfolding. Hit that like button immediately if you're ready to hear testimonies that will challenge your understanding of how heaven communicates with earth, and subscribe right away, because these accounts need to reach everyone who thinks miracles ended in biblical times. Turn on notifications, because missing these testimonies could mean missing critical warnings. Let's establish the scope of what we're discussing. Since Carlo Acutis' beatification in October 2020, there have been at least 17 documented cases of children claiming to have seen him in various contexts. Most received dismissive responses from adults who assumed the children were making things up or seeking attention. But in at least 6 of these cases, the experiences were witnessed by multiple children simultaneously, sometimes with adult witnesses, and were followed by events that validated what the children reported. The Ohio school incident is the most dramatic because of the number of witnesses and the immediate physical evidence, but it's not unique. In Brazil, a group of catechism students reported seeing Carlo during their class, and he allegedly told them their catechist would receive healing. The catechist, who had been suffering from stage 3 lymphoma, went into unexpected remission within weeks. In the Philippines, children at a Sunday school program reported Carlo appearing and telling them to pray the rosary for a specific family in their parish. That family's home burned down 2 days later, but all members survived because they happened to be at church, praying the rosary the children had told them Carlo said to pray. The pattern is consistent. Carlo appears to children, usually in religious or educational contexts, delivers specific messages or warnings, then disappears. The messages prove accurate. The warnings prevent harm, and skeptical adults are left trying to explain what happened. Drop a comment if you've heard of children in your area reporting seeing Carlo Acutis, or if this is completely new to you. Understanding how widespread this phenomenon is helps us recognize what heaven is doing. Let's dive deeper into the Ohio school incident because it's the most thoroughly documented. On March 14, 2024, Mrs. Donovan's third grade class was in the middle of math lessons around 10:15 a.m. The classroom was on the first floor of St. Teresa's Catholic Elementary School, with large windows facing the playground and parking area. According to the consistent testimonies of 23 children and their teacher, collected separately within hours of the incident by the principal and later by a priest investigating on behalf of the diocese, the boy appeared suddenly in the corner of the classroom near the bookshelves. He didn't walk in. He wasn't there, and then he was there. Multiple children described the exact same appearance. Teenage boy, maybe 15 or 16, dark hair, brown eyes, wearing jeans and a Nike sweatshirt. Several children noted that he seemed to glow slightly or had light around him. One child said he looked more real than real, like he was more there than we were. Mrs. Donovan's first reaction was confusion, not fear. She thought perhaps he was a new student or a volunteer she hadn't been told about. She started to ask who he was, but before she could speak, the boy said clearly and urgently, "Get the children away from the windows. Right now. Move them to the hallway." Something about the way he said it, the authority in his voice combined with genuine concern, made Mrs. Donovan react immediately without questioning. She later told investigators, "I just knew I needed to listen. Something in me recognized that this was not a normal situation, that I needed to act instantly." She directed the children to line up and move quickly into the hallway. The students, sensing the urgency, complied immediately. As the last child exited the classroom, Mrs. Donovan turned back to ask the boy what was happening. He was gone, just gone. She hadn't seen him leave. He had vanished. 15 seconds later, the crash occurred exactly as described earlier. A driver suffering a sudden heart attack lost control of his vehicle, crashed through the fence, and struck the side of the building where the classroom windows were. Glass exploded inward. Desks were crushed, but every child was safe in the hallway. Share this video right now if you're recognizing that this wasn't coincidence or lucky timing. Someone needs to hear about heaven's active protection through Carlo's intercession. The aftermath of the Ohio incident reveals the pattern we see in other cases. Initially, adults tried to find rational explanations. Perhaps a parent had called warning about the driver. Perhaps a school security guard had alerted them. Perhaps the teacher had heard the car's engine and reacted. None of these explanations held up under scrutiny. No calls had been made. No alerts were given. The car's approach was silent because the driver had already lost consciousness. There was no natural explanation for how Mrs. Donovan knew to move the children at that exact moment. And there was certainly no natural explanation for the boy who appeared and disappeared. 3 days after the incident, when the parent showed Mrs. Donovan the photograph of Carlo Acutis, the teacher had a breakdown. She had to be sent home, because the realization that she had seen and obeyed instructions from someone who had been dead for 18 years shattered her understanding of reality. She's a practicing Catholic who believes in miracles intellectually, but experiencing one directly overwhelmed her faith's practical categories. More importantly, when school officials separately showed the photograph to the 23 students without suggesting who it was, 21 of them immediately identified Carlo as the boy they had seen. The 2 who didn't immediately recognize him had been at the back of the classroom and hadn't seen the boy's face clearly, but they confirmed the clothing description matched perfectly. The odds of 23 children and their teacher all having the same hallucination of a boy who happens to look exactly like blessed Carlo Acutis, whose warning saves them from injury, is statistically impossible. Something happened that transcends natural explanation. But here's what makes this case even more significant. It's part of a larger pattern of Carlo appearing to children specifically to warn or protect them, and the frequency is increasing. If you're still watching, subscribe immediately. We document supernatural testimonies that prove heaven is actively intervening in our world. Don't miss what's coming next. Hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. The Brazil case occurred in August 2023 in a small parish outside Sao Paulo. 12 children aged 7 to 10 were in their weekly catechism class when, according to their unanimous testimony, Carlo appeared standing near their catechist, Mrs. Silva. The children described him identically. Teenage boy, casual clothes, gentle smile, surrounded by light. Carlo allegedly spoke directly to the catechist, though she reported seeing nothing and hearing nothing. The children, however, all heard him say, "Your sickness will not end in death. God is going to heal you, but you must have faith and not give up hope." Mrs. Silva had been diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma 3 months earlier. She was undergoing chemotherapy. Her prognosis was uncertain. The doctors had given her a 40% 5-year survival rate. She had shared this with the children's parents and with the priest, but she hadn't discussed it with the children directly because she didn't want to burden them. Yet the children all heard Carlo's message about her sickness. When they told her what the boy had said, Mrs. Silva broke down crying, overwhelmed that these children somehow knew her situation and were offering her hope through this supernatural encounter. 6 weeks after the children's report, Mrs. Silva's scans showed the tumors had shrunk dramatically. Within 3 months, she was in complete remission. Her doctors called it a remarkable response to treatment. She calls it a miracle that Carlo Acutis predicted through children who shouldn't have known she was sick. The Philippines case is even more specific and demonstrated Carlo's concern, not just for physical safety, but for spiritual preparedness. In November 2023, a group of 8 children attending Sunday school at a parish in Manila reported that Carlo appeared during their lesson about the saints and told them to deliver a message to the Rodriguez family in their parish. The message was specific. Tell them to pray the rosary together tonight. They need to pray it before they go to sleep. It's very important. Don't forget to tell them. The children were confused because they didn't know the Rodriguez family personally. But their catechist did know them and, despite being skeptical, decided to deliver the message. She called Mrs. Rodriguez that afternoon and explained that the children had experienced something unusual and wanted her family to pray the rosary that evening. Mrs. Rodriguez agreed, more to humor the catechist than because she took it seriously. Her family prayed the rosary together that night around 9 p.m., which was unusual for them. They typically prayed individually, if at all, not as a family. At 11:30 p.m., 2.5 hours after they finished the rosary, their home's electrical system sparked a fire that would have trapped the family in their bedrooms. But because they had gathered in the living room for the rosary, they were still awake, alert, and able to evacuate immediately. The fire department later confirmed that if the family had been asleep in separate bedrooms when the fire started, the outcome would have been tragic. The smoke and flames spread too rapidly for successful evacuation from the bedroom wing. The Rodriguez family knows beyond doubt that Carlo Acutis appeared to 8 children to save their lives through a message delivered hours before danger struck. Comment below if you're seeing the pattern. Carlo appears to children, delivers specific warnings or messages, and lives are saved when people listen. Your recognition of the pattern helps others see it too. These 3 cases are the most dramatic and well documented, but they're not the only ones. In Ireland, children at a youth retreat reported seeing Carlo during Mass and hearing him encourage them to receive communion more often. In Mexico, children at a Catholic school reported Carlo appearing on the Feast of the Sacred Heart and telling them to learn about Eucharistic miracles. In France, children preparing for First Communion reported Carlo joining their class and explaining the real presence in terms they could understand. The pattern extends beyond crisis intervention to spiritual formation. Carlo is not just protecting children from physical danger. He's teaching them, encouraging them, guiding them deeper into Catholic faith with special emphasis on the Eucharist. Why children specifically? Several priests and theologians investigating these cases have offered insights. Children are more open to supernatural experiences because they haven't yet developed the skepticism and materialism that close adults to such encounters. Children are humble enough to receive without questioning whether they deserve the experience. Children are simple enough to report what they see without intellectualizing it away. Jesus himself said, "Unless you become like children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven." Perhaps Carlo, who died at 15 and understands how to communicate with children, has been specially commissioned to appear to them because they're the ones who can still see, still believe, still respond with the simplicity heaven requires. But there's another dimension to why children. Multiple spiritual directors working with these cases have noted that children who experience Carlo's appearance become remarkably mature in faith afterward. They develop devotion to the Eucharist. They pray the Rosary without being forced. They talk about Jesus naturally. They evangelize their friends and families. The children who saw Carlo in Ohio now attend daily Mass when possible. The children who saw Carlo in Brazil started a prayer group. The children who saw Carlo in the Philippines taught their parents how to pray the Rosary. Carlo's appearances aren't just protecting or teaching individual children. They're creating the next generation of faithful Catholics who will carry authentic devotion into an increasingly secular world. Like this video and share it everywhere if you understand that these appearances are about more than individual miracles. They're about raising up a generation prepared for what's coming. So what should we do with these testimonies? How should adults respond when children report seeing Carlo Acutis? And what does this pattern of appearances tell us about our current moment in salvation history? First, take children seriously when they report supernatural experiences. Don't immediately dismiss them as imagination or attention-seeking. Investigate carefully. Ask questions. Document what they say. Compare testimonies if multiple children report the same experience. But don't shut them down simply because what they're describing doesn't fit your materialistic worldview. Second, recognize that Carlo has a specific mission from heaven that continues after his death. He's not appearing randomly. There's purpose and pattern to these encounters. He's particularly focused on children, on the Eucharist, on warnings about physical and spiritual danger. Understanding his mission helps us recognize authentic experiences versus false claims. Third, honor Carlo's intercession by living what he taught. If he's appearing to children emphasizing the Eucharist, we should make the Eucharist central to our lives. If he's warning about coming dangers, we should prepare spiritually. If he's raising up a generation of faithful children, we should support rather than hinder their devotion. Fourth, don't seek out these experiences. Don't try to make them happen. Don't push children to report seeing Carlo when they haven't. These are sovereign acts of heaven that happen when God permits for his purposes. Our role is to respond faithfully when they occur, not to manufacture or manipulate them. Fifth, recognize that these appearances might be preparing the church for something. When heaven intervenes with increasing frequency, when saints appear with warnings and messages, when children are being spiritually formed through supernatural encounters, it suggests we're in a significant moment. Don't ignore the signs. Don't dismiss the warnings. Prepare yourself and your family spiritually for whatever is coming. In the comments, write whether you believe these testimonies are authentic supernatural encounters or whether you think there are natural explanations. Honest discussion helps everyone process these extraordinary claims. The Schoolboy vision that saved 23 children in Ohio. The appearance to catechism students in Brazil that preceded a healing. The warning to Sunday school children in the Philippines that saved a family from fire. These aren't isolated oddities. They're part of a pattern of heaven's intervention through a young saint who loved Jesus in the Eucharist and continues serving him from heaven. Carlo Acutis appears to be particularly commissioned to work with children, to protect them, to teach them, to prepare them, and through them to reach adults who have lost the simplicity needed to encounter God directly. Mrs. Donovan, the Ohio teacher, said something profound in her testimony to diocesan investigators. "I've been a Catholic my whole life. I believed in miracles theoretically. But when you experience one, when you see someone who shouldn't exist give you information you couldn't have known, and that information saves lives, everything changes. You can't go back to casual faith. You can't treat the supernatural as optional anymore. Carlo's appearance didn't just save my students from injury. It saved my faith from mediocrity." That might be the deeper purpose behind these appearances. Not just to protect individual children from specific dangers, but to shake all of us out of spiritual complacency. To prove that heaven is real, that saints are active, that the supernatural world impinges on the natural world constantly, and that we ignore it at our peril. Carlo Acutis loved Jesus with his whole heart during his 15 years on earth. He attended daily Mass, he prayed constantly. He saw the spiritual realm as more real than the material realm, and he died offering his suffering for the Pope and the Church. That same Carlo is now in heaven, working on behalf of God's kingdom, appearing when God permits to protect, teach, and guide. The children who see him are blessed, but the blessing extends beyond them to all of us if we have ears to hear what heaven is saying through these encounters. Pay attention, take it seriously, respond with faith, and prepare yourself spiritually, because if Carlo is appearing with increasing frequency to warn and teach children, something significant is either happening or about to happen that requires a generation ready to respond. Subscribe to this channel for ongoing documentation of supernatural testimonies that the mainstream church often ignores. We believe heaven speaks, and we're committed to sharing those messages. May you have the faith of a child that sees without skepticism. May you have the humility to believe what seems impossible. May you recognize Carlo's ongoing mission and honor it by living the Eucharistic devotion he modeled. And may you be spiritually prepared for whatever these appearances are preparing us for, knowing that heaven never warns without reason and never acts without purpose. The Schoolboy vision continues. Carlo keeps appearing. Children keep seeing him. Lives keep being saved, souls keep being taught, and faith keeps being strengthened. Not because we deserve it, but because heaven loves us enough to break through with proof that cannot be denied, delivered through a teenage saint who understands children and through children who understand what adults have forgotten. That God is real, miracles happen, and saints watch over us from heaven, ready to help when we need them most.